Bloc Quebecois leader Yves-Francois is demanding an apology from NDP leader Jagmeet Singh after Singh called one of his MPs racist. That's after the MP, the Bloc MP, refused to support a motion dealing with systemic racism in the RCMP and potential ways to address it. Singh was ejected yesterday from the House, but the Bloc leader says that's not enough.
I hope that the leader of the NDP will apologize sincerely. And if not, I hope the President of the House of Commons will be quite severe, because if the only penalty is not being allowed into the room for one day or not being allowed to speak for one day, everybody will feel entitled to do the same and trade insults and accusation on the floor, which is not a good idea.
Earlier today, the Bloc asked for Mr. Singh to be removed from the House for a second day. The Speaker rejected that. The Prime Minister was also asked to weigh in. Here's his response.
It is not for me to criticize any Canadian, particularly not the only racialized leader in the House of Commons, for making other people uncomfortable by calling them out for not recognizing systemic discrimination.
Joining me now from Ottawa is NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. Hi, Mr. Singh. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Ms. Capellos.
So exactly 24 hours ago, Mr. Singh, our viewers watching this show were watching your press conference, and they heard you talk about how you were angry and then sad about what had happened. And I just want to ask, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I really want to see some changes. I'm hoping that this moment can be used to hopefully bring in some systemic changes to deal with the systemic racism in the RCMP.
The issue that your motion was based on was systemic racism in the RCMP, and like you say, some very specific issues and sort of solutions that you wanted the government to look at. And I heard you today in the House of Commons direct a lot of that towards the Prime Minister and ask him very specific questions about what the government is prepared to do. To my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, he sounded open to all of them and that there was a conversation that would happen on all of them, but there was no specific commitment. What was your interpretation?
There seemed to be a much greater openness than before. I've asked these same questions in the past, similar questions, and it seemed more vague. There seems to be that we're pushing the Prime Minister towards something more concrete. But that's really what the frustration is out there. And the frustration I was feeling is that there are so many people that have taken to the streets demanding more than just empty gestures and words, but they want to see legislative changes, policy changes. And that's what I'm fighting for, because at risk is the lives of Indigenous people, Black people, racialized people who are being brutalized and killed by the police. We need to stop it.
Is that the feeling, frustration that you had yesterday? Like, is that what prompted it for you amongst, that wider context that you talk about?
It's exactly that. I was just thinking about, what racism really comes down to in simple terms is that people dismissing the value of other people, that they have less worth or less value, or they deserve less in life because of who they are. That is exactly what it comes down to. And then it played out in the criminal justice system, in the education system, in employment. But it's really the sense that someone is worth less just because of who they are. And that was that frustration that is what we're up against when someone is not willing to do what's necessary to stop this brutality and violence against people because of who they are, Indigenous, Black, racialized. That is a frustration out there.
I want to put to you what I listened very closely to how the leader of the Bloc Quebecois answered questions today on this and on whether or not their vote on or their lack of unanimous consent. They had to say they said from your perspective, you heard him say, Mr. Terrien say no, right? And that would not allow you to have unanimous consent on this motion. The way they described it, the way Mr. Blanchet described it, was not that they are opposed to what you were putting forth, but they had agreed for the Public Safety Committee to look at the issue, and they didn't want to presuppose the outcome of that. He also contends that Mr. Terrien is not racist. What is your response to that?
Well, first off, after seeing all the videos that we've seen, all the examples that we've seen of violence against Indigenous people, it is very clear that there's systemic racism in the RCMP. That was just the starting part of the motion. That was the easiest part. Everyone already knows that exists. Given that it exists, the point of the motion was to say, let's do some concrete things about it. Now, the committee is important, the committee is going to call witnesses, which will be the RCMP commissioner, to talk about what they're doing and what the problems they're faced with. But this motion was about, let's push the federal government, the Liberal government, and Prime Minister Trudeau to actually do something now to stop the violence, to stop the systemic racism. And that's why, to me, I was just floored that anyone would say no to trying to save people's lives.
Were you surprised?
I was floored. To be honest with you, I had been very confident that this was going to pass. And in that moment, it was really interesting because even the speaker thought the motion had passed. I was in the moment, but even watching it back, the speaker thinks, okay, looks like it's agreed. And then someone else repeated loudly, no. And I look back, there was only one person in the entire chamber that loudly said no in the face of everyone else agreeing, because how could you deny in this moment, in this time, and in this pain that people are feeling, and then this desire that people have for change to stop a motion like that? I just couldn't imagine it. But I never brought a party into this. And I want to be clear, as Mr. Blanchet is trying to bring a party into this. I've not named a party, and I could name a party. It would be those who've had power to build this system that has systemic racism, and that's the Conservative and the Liberal parties. They are the two parties that have built the system of systemic inequality and systemic racism. It's those parties at fault. I've not named a party, but I will name those two parties.
Do you mean that he's sort of alleging in his press conference today that almost you were calling his whole party racist? Is that what you're referencing there?
Right. I mean, I've never named his party, and I've never named a party, and I'm naming one right now. If we're talking about systemic racism, which is what my motion was about, that's a system that is racist. The system is only built by those in power, not someone who's not in power, not by opposition parties, by parties in power. So the system that we're trying to change is a system that was built by the current Liberal government and past Liberal and Conservative governments. And I mean right now, because if you're not changing the system, you're perpetuating it.
Were you surprised today when the other member of the Bloc rose to try and prevent you from asking your questions?
Yes, it did not seem like that would be something, reading the room, reading the response of people, it did not seem that would be something that would be a priority for a party to bring up, particularly when this is about the Liberal government not acting on systemic racism. That's who I wanted to push to make this happen.
I know in the House you acknowledged what the Prime Minister said about this incident today. Have you had other conversations? Have other MPs who were there reached out to you? Has the Bloc reached out to you at all?
Some MPs have casually reached out and shown support, and I've been thankful for that. What I've really been touched by is the outpouring of love and support from people from the Black community, from the Indigenous community. I've gotten messages of people saying, moms saying, my beautiful Black kids need someone who's going to fight for them to make sure that they don't have to face police brutality. I've heard from Indigenous families and people sending messages of thank you for feeling the frustration and pain that we felt for so long. Thank you for caring. And so it's really about those communities. It's about the people that have faced police brutality and violence. It's for them that I was frustrated and angry, and it's for them that I'm going to continue to fight.
I've paid very close attention to a lot of messages I've received in response to, people watching this on the show or watching it on social media. And the one thing that stuck out for me actually was a reaction that people were surprised who, you and I listen to Parliament a lot and know the rules, but a lot of people don't, right? And they were really surprised that you were the one ejected from Parliament, right? Like that is the way that the rules work and the way that the rules were applied. And I'm wondering if you've thought about that at all and what you think that says, and if there needs to be sort of an examination of almost the, I guess, role of systemic racism in the institution of Parliament.
That's a really powerful question, and someone actually framed it very similarly to me. A friend of mine said it exactly that way, that maybe this is an example of what we're up against, because someone can block the attempt to stop systemic racism in the RCMP, which is acknowledged, and to actually bring some changes to stop the violence perpetrated against Indigenous, Black, and racialized people. So someone can stop that and block that from happening in the face of everyone else supporting it and remain in the chamber. And I can get angry at someone for stopping that and get angry at the injustice that people face and be thrown out. That is a confusing thing to wrap my head around.
Is there the possibility of a conversation with Mr. Therrien, or have him or Mr. Blanchet reached out to you at all?
I've not been reached out directly, but I want to say that it's not about one MP, and I've not asked for him to apologize to me for the gesture of dismissal, for the fact that he blocked this important motion, because it's not about him. It's not about this one MP. Really, if I can make it about anything, it's about the Prime Minister. And I have to say, I was really touched. He said some really nice words in the press conference. It was very kind, but people need more than that. And I've been putting pressure on the Prime Minister because he said some nice things, and now we need to see the action. And it pains me to say this because I've been very critical of President Trump. You know me, I've called him out. But President Trump has moved faster to bring in some changes, albeit not good enough, but he has brought in more changes and more quickly than even the Prime Minister of Canada, Prime Minister Trudeau. That to me is very problematic.
Finally, before I let you go, I do have to ask you that the Bloc said that they expect an apology from you. Your reaction to that?
You know, if it was just about me, I believe in apologizing in life. I think it's really good. I don't have ego that way. I want to accept when I do something wrong and improve from it. But it's no longer about me. If I was to apologize, people have said that I've stood up to systemic racism, and by not apologizing, I've said that I'm not going to apologize for wanting to make things better for people. And if I was to apologize, I would be betraying all these people who now feel like they matter because someone said, you know what, this is a problem, and I'm not going to back down from it. It's a way of saying people matter, and I can't take that away from people.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Singh. I appreciate your time this evening very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.